So Earl Sewell is our next guest. He's an author. He has a new book out, but he also is an audiobook narrator. And we're going to talk about both of those things when he comes on screen. Let me see. Somebody had a comment. Let's see. The food in this book will make you hungry. Do you have recipes? So I forgot to check the chat. I'm sorry, Angela. She
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah,
forgot.
the food in this book will make you hungry.
So anyway, Earl Sewell, welcome back to Black Authors Matter TV.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you
Yes, we
great.
hear
You got the
you.
Golden Gate Bridge behind you.
Yes, yes. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for thinking about me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you for all that you do. And I was listening to the interview before and I was like, so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Um, you know, with some of the stages we are in life now,
Yeah.
because I'm an empty nester and my daughter is 32 now, so I don't have any grandbabies yet. Um, but I am definitely at a different season of life, and
Yeah.
as a YA author, I'm just like, whew, actually the other day, maybe about a week or so ago, a young reader or a young lady emailed me and said, "Are you going to write any more Keisha's novels? I read them when I was in junior high school, and I'm 30 now, and I still want to go back and read them." I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, well, thank you for remembering me.
I love
I'm
that.
glad I'm glad the book had that, sort of impact on you, but I don't want to challenge. I don't want to channel my inner 16-year-old girl, at least not right now.
Yeah, sometimes you have to move on. The only time I'll include someone of that age is they would be a minor character and they would be the child of the main character. They wouldn't be the center of attention.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I don't, now I could, my daughter's 30 now, but I could, pick her brain about some things, but I just don't think I could do like a whole character. The character development would be lacking. And that's my main thing when I read a book is the character development.
Yeah,
So
I don't know how Goody Bloom does it. Yeah.
so Earl, you have a new book, but you also so I want to talk about your audiobook
Mhm.
narration first,
Sure.
and then we'll talk about your latest book. It's a health related book.
Yeah.
So how did you get into the whole audiobook thing? When did you start doing that? How long have you been doing it?
You know what? In all honesty, when my daughter was a little girl and I would play with her dolls, I would make her dolls talk. And I
Oh.
would give the character voices to the different dolls because, when she was a little girl, her room was everything Disney. She had like Mushu, the dragon. She had Toy Story. She had, Barney and all this other stuff. So when we would have time together, we would sit in the room on her floor and we would have our little creative little things. And I would make her dolls talk and she would actually talk back to them as if they were real. and
Wow.
so,
What you
and so
what you were involved at?
yeah, yeah. So later in my writing career, when that person with the last name of Bezos invented something called the Kindle, and people started downloading books, and bookstores started having issues, I decided to reinvent myself,
Mhm.
to because you know I'm a storyteller at heart. I mean, it runs through me. It is what my fingers are to my hand. It is something that I can not do. So when I decided to reinvent myself, I went back and I got a master's degree in literature. Even though as a published author, I went back and got a master's degree in it. So, and what that did for me, it was like opened me up to the world. Instead of reading just American authors, I started reading authors from all over the world, and it blew my mind because, as an American citizen, I'm trained to read American books and not necessarily read books from, the diaspora all over the world. And I think your previous guest said, America has to get out of the sense of that we're the center of the world. And so it opened me up when I started doing that. But anyway, so that after I did that, then it was a natural progression to like, how do I take this gift that I have and even expand it more? So I hired a coach. I hired somebody who had narrated cartoons, who had narrated for products, and I learned the craft of bringing stories to life. Because yeah, people just think, "Oh, you're just sitting there reading." No, no, you're not just sitting there reading. You really have to get the author's intent. You have to be all the characters. You have to make distinctive character voices. You have to have emotions. And sometimes you may have to speak in dialects that are unfamiliar to you. Like, for example, I had to learn how to. Some people say, "Oh, can you do a Southern dialect?" And people say, "Oh, yeah, I can do a Southern dialect, but let's understand what that is regionally." Mississippi is the South, but so is New Orleans. And there's
Two
a
totally different dialects. Oh my
two,
goodness.
two
We can't understand
totally
a word the Mississippi folks are saying.
so you have to be able as a voice actor to be able to make those nuances and voice if the character is from a particular region. Same thing with an East Coast accent. Somebody says, "Oh yeah, I can do an East Coast accent." Well, is that East Coast New York? Is that East Coast Boston? Is that East Coast Philly? And so, they're all East Coast, but they have their distinction, and it even breaks down by culture. Is it
And
East Coast? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
just to jump in, Earl, I did listen to your work on Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way,
Mhm.
and I could tell how challenging it was because you voiced a lot of characters in that story. It
Yeah.
wasn't just your main character, and
Mm.
it wasn't just your main character's wife. Then there were so many minor characters in that story, and you had to voice so many different ones, and I had to be able to know who was talking. So you did a really good job distinguishing who was talking. I always knew who was talking, or when you had to have a conversation, and I knew it was only you talking, but you did a good job changing your voice, having a conversation between characters.
Yeah, and it's so the process of that is, I'll read the entire book. Then I have to go through and I'll have to like make little notes on each character, and I count how many characters I have to voice. And then I have to create a file, an audio file of me narrating in that particular character's voice. So whenever that
Okay.
character shows up in a chapter, I go back and listen to the voice I gave that particular character,
Ah, okay.
so that I can get right into it, so that that character voice stays consistent. But yeah, it can be challenging. I mean, I had to be like an 11-year-old boy and a 90-year-old woman, and everybody in between. And so it was challenging and it was fun, but at the same time, I I had to really do some vocal acrobatics to to make that happen. So when I'm in the booth and I'm sitting back there and I'm saying, okay, I got to read this chapter, and I have to say, okay, let me make sure I get the voices right. And so, but it's such a fun thing to audibly tell a story.
Yes.
And somewhere in my DNA's history, there was probably a previous version of me way back in the diaspora that was doing this, because I don't know. This is just something that just comes. It's like a calling. It just comes to me. And even when I'm on stage speaking, people say, "Wow, you're a great storyteller when you tell a particular story." And I'm like, "Okay, all right, I accept that. I accept that. It's a gift." So
Yeah,
so, but I
and it's
love
a
audiobook
great
narrating.
gift to have because I said it before with the last audio book narrator we had. A narrator can make or break a story. I have stopped listening to a story, not because the story wasn't good, but because the narrator could not voice the story well, and it just turned. I mean, I think that the only time I have DNF'd the book was when the narrator wasn't telling the story very well.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. It's really a skill, because you're intimate with the listener. You're right here between their ears, so they're drowning out everything else around them, and it's your voice, the narrator's voice, that has to take them through this. So it's a very intimate moment. I mean, just like reading is an intimate moment, audiobook narration is just as intimate.
Yes.
And you don't like, for example, I have turned down projects because I said I'm not the right voice. Somebody says, "Oh, I like your voice." I said, "But your book, I'm not the right voice for it." Like I've gotten offers to narrate westerns. I don't have Sam Elliott's voice. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I can't go on.
He's
You know,
he's
I don't
he's
have.
good. He's good as a soldier or the cowboy. His voice is perfect for that.
Right. So
Mhm.
it's about casting too.
Yes.
Um,
When you were on the show, the last, which I think is like a year and a half ago when you were on, that was when you told us you had narrated Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way.
mhm.
And I hadn't heard of the book before that. And I decided to get a copy of the book because you told me that it was a good book and you did the voices. I don't do the audiobook thing yet. That's Rhonda's lane. I read books. I love to
Mhm,
read
mhm,
them in my hand.
mhm.
One day maybe I might get into the audiobooks. But from what I understand, it does the narrator does make a huge difference. But Mr. Jimmy from Around the Way, I read it. I recommended it to our book club. We read it. Um, we all loved it. It was my best read for 2025. And I read a lot of books, but it was my best read for 2025. I didn't get to listen, but it was such and then I read his other book. I can't even remember the name of it now.
Yeah, I know the book you're talking
The
about.
other book that he had.
Yeah,
But I read that after, even though it came out before. It was his
yeah,
first book.
yeah,
And what's his last name? Blunt? Is his last
yeah.
Jeffrey?
Jeffrey Blunt.
Jeffrey
Yeah,
Blunt.
Jeffrey Blunt. Yeah,
He has an amazing way of making you feel the anguish that a male character
hmm,
experiences. Not everybody can write that, but he
yeah,
did an amazing job in both of the books of doing that. Just
yeah.
different stories. It was just really great writing.
So that was one of I was so blessed and happy that he selected me, or that their team selected me to be the narrator, because as a writer I can look a bit more deeply into the work because I know the process and I know what story arcs are like, and I know, I just know writing, and I know
Mm-hmm.
really, really good writing. And when I read that book, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna put my foot in this when I narrated because I wanted to do it. It was such a great story, and how do you have an affair and you feel bad for the man that had the affair? I mean,
Well,
like,
I felt bad for the man who had the affair only because the woman who outed him only did it so she can get some street cred, basically. There was no reason for her to out him. There was no reason at all for her to do it.
no, and
He
so
did a
and so,
good thing for the community, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go tell everybody that I slept with him just because he did this great thing, and I want to tell everybody that I slept with him because he did a great thing."
yeah. And I like the fact that it was more than just that. There was the emotional dynamics of it. It
Yeah,
was what it did to the marriage. It is what
right.
it did to the children.
I
It
could,
is
yeah,
what it did to the community.
I could absolutely see why the wife could not feel like she could stay. I totally felt that, and that was a really powerful scene when she really made up her mind why she couldn't stay.
Yeah.
But then
And
she was
so,
withholding the nookie.
yeah. Well, you
That
you
is
know,
not going to work.
weaponizing that part of your marriage, or weaponizing that part of your life. Um, that's a whole nother conversation about how a man or a woman can weaponize sex.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, he
For
did
manipulation.
good holding out as long as he did. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, and so I've had these conversations with book clubs about it, and I said, sex is not a want for a man, it's a need.
It's true.
We need it.
It's like number one with men. I find that it's
Mm-hmm.
my experience in life, going through this life, being married twice and having a few boyfriends here and there. Um, it is. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Women, we're built different. Men and women are built different.
yeah,
And it's
and
security for a woman more so. Um,
yeah,
but for a man, yes. And
it
God knew what he was doing because that has helped keep the population repopulated.
yeah, yeah. The humanity, it helps keep humanity going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps keep humanity going. But
Yeah.
yeah, so for that particular title, I just love the depth of the characters and the depth of the complexity that they were going through in life. It was
Hmm.
relatable, it was understandable. And and again, I love voicing like the elderly lady, Miss Septima.
Yeah.
She was 90 years. I told Jeffrey, I said, man, you got to write a sequel to this. I'm
It
sorry,
was an
you ain't done.
amazing book. But
Yeah,
it's one of those books that you almost would understand if he couldn't do a sequel because it just had so much in it. It had so many layers in it,
Mm-hmm.
it had
and
so
it's
many
like
layers.
he probably exhausted everything writing that book. It's one of
Right.
those, and you don't read a lot of books like that, you
Mm-mm.
know.
I know he's working on another one, and I know it has been optioned for a movie, but that's about all I know.
Oh,
I know.
okay.
Has
That's good.
Yeah,
it?
yeah. And
I
if you
would.
didn't know, Jeffrey is an Emmy award-winning television producer. That's his background,
Yes,
journalism. And
right.
so
We
he
talked
was,
about that.
I think, yeah, he was on the Today Show, or that was one of his shit,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah, he was on the
Um,
show.
oh, okay. So okay,
Yeah,
great. All right.
we've
Yeah. Okay.
interviewed him. So,
Oh,
and I can't remember
wonderful.
if I interviewed him before you or after you.
Okay.
I can't remember that.
Yeah,
No,
he's a
it
great
must have
one.
been after because
Yeah.
I think you told me about the book, and that's what
Yeah.
prompted the interview. He was a really good interview because he talked to us
Yeah.
about being a producer and what that
Yeah.
means. Hmm.
Yeah, so he's a really great guy. And the last thing I'll say is another book. Well, a couple other books. I narrated Donna Hill's book. Oh,
A
it's been a
new
couple
one?
of years. No, it's Nita Hopkins is a story. It takes place in the '60s. It's a civil rights book.
Oh
I have
yeah, I
to look at.
read that. It was good. I
It
can't
was a
remember the
woman
title.
with the afro. Oh, why? See, this is what happens when you start aging. Stuff just
Well,
stop
and when you
falling
read a lot of
apart.
books, you can't keep them all.
Yeah,
You
because I've
can't
narrated
remember
so.
all those titles and authors'
Yeah,
names. You can't. So you just have a
and
lot of data. That's what Google is for. Or
yeah,
so
and
see
then
now you've made me think. I'm gonna look it up.
yeah, and then
Donna's
there was
book.
another one I did
It was
from
really good. It was
yeah,
historical fiction.
right. Then there was another one that was a really good one that I did was by a South American author, and he was a
Hmm.
tango dancer, and it was a romance book called A Season in Lights about Broadway actors. I love narrating that book as well.
Did you have to
So
speak with a Spanish accent?
I did, and I had to do it as a woman. Okay, all right. With this boy,
Wow.
I mean, I did so
Wow.
many takes on this thing talking about Earl. Don't sound like for example, somebody white trying to talk black, because people pick up on it, it's like, nah, 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 that ain't it. That because you don't want to be in their ears, and you're trying to. Somebody can actually tell that you're not from the culture, and you're
Right.
overacting it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you
So,
didn't have to
but yeah.
speak Spanish though. You
I
just
did not have to. I just had
had
to
the
have that
accent.
dialect.
Okay.
I had to have the dialect of a woman from the islands, and then I had to narrate it as a love scene. Oh my God! You talk
Oh,
about
Wow.
challenging to be the
oh,
woman looking at the man talking about his shoulders. And I'm like, well, I never looked at another man's shoulders before and thought, yeah,
how comfortable is that to narrate a
Yeah.
love scene, whether man or woman, when you have to narrate a love scene?
you,
I
I
mean, I know
have to
you're
be.
getting paid, you have to do it, but I
Yeah,
mean, is
yeah.
that comfortable?
to be true to the moment, to act in the moment, I have to be comfortable doing it. So, that's one of the things that I learned to narrate in the voice of a woman or a man or somebody else. And if it's a love scene, I have to look at what the author has put forth, and really step into that moment and narrate that love scene like I am that character in the experiencing everything that's on the page, whether I'm a man or a woman. So,
Wow.
that's a unique, that's, got in the booth and I was like, whoo, it's getting kind of hot in here.
Yeah, Carrie Height said it was really like acting because he did some acting before he did the voice,
Mhm.
and he said it really is. He said acting prepared him for it.
Mhm.
Right.
So, and I guess the same way you being the characters for your daughter's dolls kind of paved the way for you.
Yeah, yeah, kind of paved the way for it, and that was the beginning of it. And when she got all her tickles and giggles out of it, I was, I was just being a dad, she just, she was like, make this one talk and make this one talk, that sort of thing. It's
Donna
amazing.
has so many books that I still can't find it.
Yeah,
She has over a
yeah,
hundred books, and I'm trying
yeah,
to pull it up, but I can't remember the exact title. If I see the cover, I'll know, but I can't find it. And of
yeah.
course,
And so
I'll be able to find it later.
yeah, and so that's now. I think I've narrated close to 30 titles. And
Wow.
Okay.
so it does get to that point where I'm like, okay, I narrated this book. When did I narrate it? Book some were self-published, some were for publishing houses. Um, but it's like, I narrated them and they were fun
Now
to narrate.
it's not the I Am Aya book, is it? It's
No.
not that one. It's the one before that. And I read
Yeah.
it. I
And
loved it.
you got me looking it up now because I'm like, I know
Yeah,
this
I
book.
can't. If I see the cover, I'll. Oh, Confessions in B flat.
B
I
flat.
finally
Thank
found
you.
it.
There you go.
Yeah. Yes.
Confessions and B flat.
It was a
Yes.
really good book.
Yeah, I love
So
that
you
one.
narrated the audiobook for that one.
Yes. Yes. It
Oh,
was I
okay.
believe that was a dual narration where I narrated the male and another a female author narrated the female, and there were parts where we both came together, which was really interesting how the
Mm,
producers at I think it wasn't Harper Collins, it was well, whoever, I think it was HarperCollins that published that book or a subsidiary. It was interesting how they blended that. That was really, really cool how
mm.
they did that. So I just have fun with it. Whenever I get a good project, like I said, I turn down projects that just I say this isn't going to work, and you know,
Okay.
it then there are projects that I was like, oh yeah, I can sink my teeth into this one. I know this culture.
Okay. Now we
Yeah.
have 5 minutes left, so we want to talk about your new book.
So
And
so yeah, so real quickly, so I produced a beginner's guide to juicing. And I think I've told you guys my journey of,
Oh, I
reversing
need that.
chronic.
I need that book. Before you even continue, I need that book. I need that book. I juice every 2 weeks. I batch juice. I need that book.
oh,
Yes. So I put a beginner's guide to juicing, and it was based off of my health journey as being, I'm 57 going on 58 now. And, I got more miles behind me than I do in front of me. But you get to a certain age and all of a sudden health issues start coming up. And so some of the typical ones that came up for me was high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes. And the Western way of treating things is to, hey, we'll manage the disease. And when I asked my doctor, I said, well, who wants to manage a disease? I want the cure. And he
Yes.
looked at me
right,
like I was crazy.
right. Well, they
And
don't
and
get
this
paid. If you get cured, they don't get paid anymore.
well, yeah,
So
and,
they
and,
don't
and
really have an incentive. Really and truly, they don't have
so
the incentive for you to be cured. You have to find your own cure. In many ways, most of the time, it's a natural cure. It's something that you already have available to you. It's not
right.
a drug that's approved by the FDA. Um,
Right. And then to be in all honesty, a lot of practitioners in the Western world don't get training in nutrition. They
they
get
don't.
very little training in nutrition. They get heavy pharmaceuticals, dope you
Yes.
up.
Yes.
And so you're already feeling bad, and then you go put another chemical that upsets your stomach, makes you crazy, makes your brain fog, and so but they call that healthcare. And so I did not want to. I went that route, and it just made me sicker. And when I would go back, they would just prescribe another pill, and I'm like, now you got me on a lunchbox of pills. I got this pill, this pill, this pill. I got 3 pills for high blood pressure, and I'm like, well, what's the cause? And their standard answer was, well, you're Black. Black people are at a higher risk for hypertension. Black people are at higher risk for type 2 diabetes. And I kept saying, why?
Why? Yeah.
Why? I was like, if and I'm thinking, I'm putting on my colonizer hat. If we were so strong and well built and sturdy, which is why y'all went over to West Africa and got us in the first place. If we were that if we were that strong and sturdy, how are we now suddenly weak and pathetic? It's not adding up. It's just like the thing, like, don't go to Africa, it's a dangerous place, but yet and still you got all these European countries over there, taking resources. So if it's such a bad place, why are you over there? So my thinking was, if the pharmaceuticals, if they're making me sicker, why am I still taking it? And the last thing I'll say is my doctor said, he says, oh, we're going to put you on this diabetic medicine, but eventually you'll have to shoot insulin. And I was like, no, man, no. So anyway, I created the juicing book because what I did is I went on a research journey because I'm an author and I research stuff. And so I said, you know what? My healthcare, my functionality is my business. My sick care is what my practitioner is interested in. And I want to keep as far away from having sick care as I can. You might catch me when I'm 95. But right now at 57, I'm not interested in sick care. I'm interested in keeping my health, my strength, my vitality for as long as I possibly can. So what I eventually learned was it's the food. It's our processed, highly processed food. 70% of the food on the American market is processed or some chemical or a product. It's not even food. They call it a product. And then I just said, you know what? Before all of this mechanization of food, how did mankind survive? They grew their own stuff. They picked it fresh from the ground. And they were able to survive and thrive and all of that. So however we got away from that to say, okay, we're going to eat just the processed stuff that's not even food that your body is not able to digest, I stopped doing all of that. And when I stopped doing that, lo and behold, hey, your high blood pressure is no longer there. Your cholesterol numbers are better. Your A1C has dropped from 12.9 to 5.6. And it's like, well, what are you doing different? I said, I stopped eating what was causing the disease.
Right.
Stop eating. It's hard. I mean, it was hard to let that chicken go. It was hard to let that stuff go.
But do you let it go all? Did you let it go all together?
Altogether.
Wow. So you don't? Are you a vegan?
I mean, you got to understand. Look at this. It's like I put up a photo just today of me sprinting this morning at age 57, and a picture of me sprinting as a 17-year-old. A 40-year difference, and I can still do it. Most people, when they get to 40, they start talking about, oh, my knees, oh, I can't get down from here. I was like, you don't want to encourage that thinking. You want to be able to say, I'm 40 and I can still get it.
Yes. Well, 40 is kind of young to be talking about knee problems, but some people do. But a lot of it has to do with weight. And that's something that America has a problem with weight.
So here I am now.
So we can only see half of it, but
I know. But yeah, that's my jar of beet juice. This is the beet juice.
Okay.
Yeah, this is cucumber, red beet, ginger, lemon, green apple, all juiced. Oh man, it's so good. It's so good. So the book is called Drink the Rainbow, and the idea is that nature is full of food. That is natural that you can get. I even have a greenhouse. I started growing my own stuff because when I started growing my own stuff, it tastes better than the stuff at the grocery store.
Yeah.
It tastes. Yeah. And so I have to thank my mother for that because she was a gardener and she was always growing stuff. And my uncle Jesse was also a gardener. He would grow squash. He would grow cucumbers. He would grow. To me, I was a little kid and I was just like, Unc, why are you out here growing all this stuff? He said, he goes, it's cheaper, boy. Is what he would say. And so, but they would go out, when I go up to my uncle's house, they would go out to the garden, they would pick up a zucchini, they would pick up some squash, and they would just right there,
Yeah.
just right there. And so, so it took me a while to get my little gardening chops down, but I got them. I
Yeah,
got
well,
them.
Earl, we're at the end of our time. We're actually a couple
I
of
know.
minutes over. So thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Congratulations on your audiobook narration career taking off. And the new book, Eat the Rainbow. By
Drink the rainbow.
Drink the Rainbow. Well, you
We're
can
gonna eat it and
too.
we're gonna drink it.
We're gonna eat it. All right, you guys, it's been a plum pleasing pleasure. I know you have somebody else waiting in the shadows. Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you. Love you. You guys take care.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Have a great night.
All right, bye.